Today's guest is Meinl Cymbals artist Forrest Rice. Forrest drums for a few projects, but is known primarily as the drummer for the band Covet, an instrumental trio led by budding guitar hero Yvette Young. Covet's music is a twisting labyrinth of time changes, dissonance mixed with lush melodies, and tightly woven, intricate rhythmic compositions that take the listener on a really interesting sonic journey from song to song. Before COVID and its lockdowns came along and ground live shows to a halt, you could go to any Covet show and always, without fail, see Forrest with the cymbals way up high and with a perpetual smile always on his face. In the meantime, until we get back to any semblance of live shows, you can go to the Meinl Cymbals YouTube channel and watch the videos we produced with Forrest and see what I'm talking about. Cymbals up high and smiling. The smiling's not for show. Forrest is genuinely a happy camper, stoked on his life and the paths he's been taking. Whether it's been his obsession with drumming or his current obsession with skateboarding, a passion he set to the side for a long time when drums took over, but has since rekindled a love affair with, Forrest is one of these fortunate people that figured out early on that nothing good will ever come to you if you don't walk through your days with gratitude, a smile for others, and an appreciation for the simple pleasures of getting better daily at whatever it is that you love. And not for being able to say that you're the best, but for being able to say that it simply makes you feel good to progress at your passion. In a way, Forrest reminds me of a martial arts teacher I once had that was kind and sweet and never spoke poorly of others and was gentle to a fault. But when he was in his moment, whether he was sparring or physically teaching and demonstrating something, it was crazy just how obviously great he was. You knew he could take down a whole room all by himself. And I think his gentle nature actually helped to emphasize his abilities as a fierce martial artist. Conversely, there was another instructor at the same martial arts school who was a pretty fierce martial artist too. But he spoke poorly of others frequently, was prone to regular drama in his life, and despite being cool at times, he was unpredictable enough in his temperament that he was unsettling to be around. All of that served to de-emphasize his talents and make him someone that drove students away from the school. So with Forrest, I've seen a lot of similarities in the kind and badass martial arts teacher I had. Gentle, sweet, and ferocious on the kit. I admire those qualities about him a lot, and I know it's why he's a working drummer and not someone that's been relegated to the practice room only. I guess it's no surprise why Forrest also is a fan of the Star Wars universe and the Tolkien universe of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. There are timeless messages in both of those stories about how, no matter how skilled you are, your alignment with the darker path will always be your eventual downfall, one way or another, badass or not. So you'll just have to put up with the first 15 minutes of this podcast where Forrest and I geek out on both of those universes. So, without making this longer than usual podcast any longer, I'll stop my yapping. Enjoy the podcast. So I'd like to welcome everybody into the Meinl Radio Podcast. Today we've got one of the nicest dudes to ever walk planet Earth, Forrest Rice. Forrest, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked.
So I have a few questions I want to lob at you and get a good conversation going. One of the first things that I have known about you but never asked is that I know you like sci-fi, like Star Wars. I think you like Lord of the Rings also. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge fantasy sci-fi fan.
Okay, so I was watching at one point a video of you at the 2016 Guitar Center Drum-Off District Finals. And
yes.
So there's the guy up there. He's all official. He's talking to the crowd. And he's asking you your influences. And the first influence listed was Gandalf the White. And I need to ask... why Gandalf the Grey took a back seat to Gandalf the White. Did you know that the guy that played Gandalf, Sir Ian McKellen, he totally preferred playing Gandalf the Grey to playing Gandalf the White because of the vulnerability of Gandalf the Grey's character?
I could see Gandalf the Grey being a deeper character because he's not actualized, so he has his demons. And Gandalf the White, it's just like, it's just to be even nerdier, I guess. You know, when you say your influences, I've done it for so long, I would name drummers, and then I just thought it'd be funny to name fictional figures. And but yeah, that was just like, oh, so I was just like, as I'm doing it, I'm like, yeah, Gandalf the White.
So you were just going for nerd factor. You really like don't have your like a preference of gray over white, right?
Probably not, but gray. But when you bring up the character and the actor, I definitely enjoy. There's a lot of memeable moments, I think, with Gandalf the Grey. Oh,
dude, totally. Man, that guy's eminently quotable all the time.
Mm-hmm. Fly, you fools! Like everything.
Yeah, whenever I have an artist who wants to, I need to give the artist my cell number or something. Not that my cell number is some big secret thing, but if everybody gave out an artist relations dude cell number, it would just get called willy-nilly all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not because I'm awesome, because I'm not, but just because people want to try and get in with a company, whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. So whenever someone gets my number and I give it to them, I just tell them, keep it secret, keep it safe. And I guess the first guy to get that was John Longstreth. You know, he's one of our insane metal drummers in our family of artists. A nerd like me and a nerd like you in the best way, and he totally knew right away. Now,
that's such a good line. You could say that about anything you give somebody.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you had like some roommates and maybe your peanut butter Captain Crunch, you were down to your last bowl or something like that, and you hid it in the pantry and you didn't want that one dude to go grab it. The other guy saw you put it in there. You're like, dude, keep it secret, keep it safe.
Yeah, me and my bandmates, we definitely drop that line all the time.
Nice. Okay, so
we're always quoting stuff like that, like any just one-liners to me after, because I grew up on a lot of 90s action movies. Like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, and just one-liners in themselves are like they were like the first kind of memes in a way. They were like, you know, like the "I'll be back" and yeah. I feel like all that stuff just kind of hits us, and it compartmentalizes a whole like idea of a movie almost. But yeah.
Yeah, totally. Now,
love one-liners.
Speaking of Schwarzenegger and one-liners, have you seen the YouTube clip that's a montage of every curse word he says in every movie he's been in?
No, I need to see that.
Oh, dude. It's the best thing ever. I mean, and then they group them together. So, like, for every time he said something like bullshit, like, they'll quote each one of those. Like, it'll just back-to-back bullshits. It's so great.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I want to see that now.
Well, as far as Lord of the Rings goes, are you more a fan of the Lord of the Rings trilogy or the Hobbit trilogy?
Oh, man, the Hobbit is kind of like... It's like the Disney-fication of Lord of the Rings, I thought. But I don't know. I saw like Two Towers in the theaters with my dad maybe 11 times or something. Like we went so much, and I always enjoyed watching it, and just the immersion of those movies is very very deep. And I think definitely the original trilogy. At one point I was trying to read them when I was like in 5th grade, but it was just too weird, and I watched like the old animated Hobbit, and I thought that was kind of cool. I like the animated Gollum and like the voices. But definitely the original trilogy. And my favorite now might be still Two Towers or The Fellowship. Return of the King is just a little long.
Yeah,
but I do like them all, you know.
I think I'm currently a Fellowship guy. My problem once you get to the Two Towers, which is killer. I mean, dude, the whole Battle for Helm's Deep thing is insane. It's one of the best.
It's so good.
Oh, one of the best fight scenes ever. But I don't know, man. Gollum kind of bothered me. All of his screaming and crying and yelling, like it makes the first movie seem a little quieter and more peaceful. Anyway, golly, I'm geeking out.
Yeah. I know, right? I remember getting in debates with my fifth grade teacher about who would win in a fight, Legolas or Gimli. And we were just so nerdy about it. And I was like, yo, he would put him down like 40 yards away. There's no way he'd even get there.
Right.
You know, and then he'd be like, no, he'd be up in his face with like an axe so quick. It was just really funny how everyone was a fan all at once. It kind of was like, I don't know, imagine if you were into Star Wars when that came out. Probably a similar thing. You're just all talking about it and theorizing characters, and it's just fun.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I'm a total Star Wars fan. That actually is a great segue. It leads me to my next question, because I know you're a Star Wars fan. Out of
huge Star Wars fan, yeah.
Okay, so out of the three, you could basically separate them into three trilogies for Star Wars.
Yeah, totally.
Which trilogy is your favorite, and why?
Oh, original by far, most magic. They get to, man, the prequels were just very dry and like kind of hard to watch. They're very memeable, and it's kind of awkward. Dude,
Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen ruined the prequels.
They were really bad, and like even McGregor wasn't too much better. They just made him play such a... Obi-Wan was just so boring because he's trying to be like a perfect Jedi. But I loved Qui-Gon. I wish Qui-Gon would have been in it more.
Oh, for me, the perfect
Jedi, someone like in between, you know, like a Jedi who does his own thing, I guess, would have been cooler than someone trying to fit into the order. But yeah, like, I don't know. I have most problems with the sequels and the prequels, which is funny because when you consider yourself a fan, I'm the biggest fan of the first two movies. A New Hope and Empire, I think, are the most potent Star Wars movies, and then like the Ewoks kind of like chip away at it just a little bit.
Yeah, no, I would agree
when it comes to the impact of it. But I love the feel of those first two, especially. They just kind of do it all for me. That scene when Yoda is telling Luke about the Force on Dagobah is like such a deep scene.
Yeah,
I just feel like there's no other movie really like hit that vein nearly as hard. But also, so I'd probably rank them. I'd definitely put the first two movies on top, and then Return of the Jedi, and then it would go into the prequels, and then the sequels. Man, I really want to like them because they're visually pretty, but oh man, I just get mad because I feel like they never finished a lot of stuff. Like I could see that this movie went through so many people's hands in writing, and like it just kind of got scattered all over the place. And I've literally watched like hours of analysts on YouTube about these movies and why, and just like, of course I have my own opinions, but I just like I like to see what other nerds think about this stuff too. And yeah, I just think like, yeah, it should have been more about, although I like Rey, I think Kylo Ren had the most interesting thing going on, and you never really see, like, I don't know, it never really plays out. But I don't want to give any spoilers if you haven't seen them, but I would just watch the original trilogy. Although it's cool to have Star Wars perpetuate throughout time like this. I definitely enjoy just the first two when I want to get back into it. But, you know, I will say Mandalorian was great. I don't know if you've seen that.
Dude, Mandalorian, top to bottom, is insane. The last episode, can't give it away, but right? The last episode of the second series, the season closer, when I saw that one, when I saw the one X-Wing fighter, I just went, no way. And yeah, and I was right. As soon as I confirmed it, and when I confirmed it, I was losing my mind. It was great.
It was great. I gotta say, it's preserving my love for the franchise, and just the way Mando feels, how it's been a slower burn up till this point. Yeah. It just feels like it's trying to develop something, and it just seems to me like a way, like Like Dave Filoni, the creator of the Clone Wars, I know he's a super George Lucas like whisperer or whatever. So he's like very into the lore and like the world and stuff. But yeah, it's funny. I actually just picked up a Star Wars book. I picked up the Thrawn Book. Excited to read that.
No, I've not read any of the books, but I have heard that the books aren't just these kind of cheap like spin-offs. What I've heard is that they actually help augment the Star Wars canon the same way that the Clone Wars cartoon has done. So that's interesting. There's
definitely a lot of Easter eggs and like lore in that stuff. And I hear Mandalorian hinted at a lot of Clone Wars Easter eggs the last few episodes, starting from like the Jedi. But that's really cool though. I really like I mean, fan service is sick.
Yeah.
No,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
We want to see the Millennium Falcon and want to see Jedi and like the Skywalker family, because that's kind of what made it cool. Although I'm down to see them explore other parts of that kind of that world.
Oh, dude! And to that end, before we wrap up this almost 15 minutes talk about Star Wars, I will say, which is fine with me, I will say that exploring other worlds is what made me such a fan of Rogue One. I love Rogue One, and I also wish that they would do, like, if not a movie, but at least include him in a few episodes of The Mandalorian or the upcoming Obi-Wan show they're going to do. Like, devote some time to Darth Maul. I feel like that guy did not get his due.
I know, I completely agree. And when they hint there's a little Easter egg with Maul, like at the very end of Solo, and you're just like, why?
Yeah.
You know, there is some more canon stuff with Darth Maul I hear in Clone Wars. So I might just try to find those episodes, like just the couple, and try to watch that thread.
Yeah,
and I'll update you on that.
No, you're right.
I want to know too.
You're right. You just reminded me. This is what my older brother told me. He said, "Dude, you got to watch Clone Wars because in there's going to be plenty of Darth Maul to like wet your whistle." So, okay, moving out of Star Wars.
Might have to watch a few episodes, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
Moving out of Star Wars realm. Now, there's going to be listeners out there who know who you are, and that's totally cool. And there's going to be some listeners that don't know who you are. So for the listeners that don't know who you are, can you give us sort of a rundown of your history as a lover of music and as a drummer? You know, where did you come from, musically speaking, and what milestones helped you along the way as far as your career, like actual career, is concerned?
Okay, man, that's a big question. So for those who don't know me, I'm a Southern California guy, and I'm also a drummer, a professional drummer. Wouldn't you know? And you wouldn't know actually because you don't know me. So
well, they know now.
So now you know. And I play in a band called Covet with an amazing guitarist, Yvette Young, an amazing bass player, David Adamiak. And we're what some people call a math rock band, which is a very modern way to describe, I guess, like progressive rock with a lot of time signatures. But math rock has its own lineage based in a lot of like 90s metal and post-hardcore and Midwest emo. But that's another conversation. So I play in this third wave math rock band, and I also play in another band called Standards. And funny thing, my friend Marcos Mena saw Covet and was like, I want to start a band. And then he started his band called Standards, and they've been kind of slowly blowing up, and I see him get a lot of like attention for his clever videos, and just his branding is, I think, very smart. But yeah, so I play in those bands, and I also write my own music in a project called WØLFY, and it's kind of synth heavy. Influences are all over, from like jazz and R&B to synth and prog, and it's kind of just my playground to do whatever style I want, because I listen and like to play more styles than the math rock style, I guess. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I also have been a teacher for the past, like, I don't know, 7 years, and yeah, I teach pretty much on a regular basis via Zoom right now.
So this is,
yeah.
I love how you're starting here and giving us the Benjamin Buttons treatment by going backwards. So that's a random reference, I know, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
So I got to ask, like, so you've ended up in this space where I loved all your descriptions for the music you're playing now. You've ended up in this current space of really cool exploratory music. What led you towards being an exploratory musician? Like, where did you, what was the first thing that like bit you and gave you the bug and made you want to play drums and made you really become a fan of music? And then, like, what were those like moments in music that got you to this point?
The startup. So I think, so I saw the movie School of Rock, and I just wanted to be a musician. I didn't know. I guess I'd never considered how music was made or if it was played on instruments. But I just had not really thought about music until I saw this movie, and then I loved that movie so much, and I just watched it all the time, that I was like, I really just want to play an instrument. And my mom dug out an old guitar, and she was like, okay, play this. And they gave me like a chord book and a guitar. I really wish I would have been given a lesson and told what a major scale was at this time, but that wouldn't happen for a much longer time. So it made guitar infinitely harder to understand. And I couldn't get it because I couldn't hear notes and know where they were, but I could hear a bass drum and a snare and a hi-hat and know where they were in time. And I could pretty much just like play beats I heard on my lap. And then they were like, okay, like, if you really want to play drums, here's a practice pad. And, they thought I was just instrument hopping, just hopping hobbies. But when I got into drums, it was just like a full-on obsession right away. I was just like trying to do doubles and paradiddles, and I was just like in it. So I played on a pad for about 6 months. It was that old Remo pad that's very loud. Yeah. With rims. You know that one?
Oh, the one that's got the gray rim on it?
Yeah, exactly, that one. And it's not subtle at all. And I played that one a lot, and pillows. And then they're like, all right, let's get you a drum set. And then they got me a kit, and then I just played for 6 hours immediately. And they were just like, whoa, what did we
yeah, what the hell did we do to ourselves?
What did we do? Yeah, so I was just like, woohoo, you know.
Wait, how old were you at this point?
I'm about 15.
Okay, 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so wait, so you saw School of Rock, and I mean, basically the penultimate tune in there, like the finale of the movie is the AC/DC tune. I think it's A Long Way to the Top, if you want to rock and roll as a tune. So
yep.
I'm having a hard time imagining that you decided to go out and buy some AC/DC. I feel like you just went straight to King Crimson's like Discipline album or something.
I know. I see what you're saying, the styles. So you know that there's the scene where Freddie's watching clips of drummers in the montage, and like there's a scene where Jack Black like shows him like a Buddy Rich solo, and it like zooms in on Freddie. I feel like that one was me, because I was just like, whoa, that guy is just like flying around the drums. And I was just into that. So I grew up on like a lot of classic rock, and my mom listened to all kinds of music. My mom like actually hit me to a lot of like R&B, hip hop, and gospel music, which is really cool. And aside from like rock music and pop music, but I feel like my mom just was into a full spectrum. And so I think the first band ever that was like quirky or progressive was definitely Rush. And I heard that album, Exit Stage Left, the live Rush album, and I think my friend Wesley, his dad, had that record, and he let me borrow it, and I just like listened to that thing religiously, and hearing the crowd applaud like mid-drum solo while Neil Peart's just ripping it on YYZ, that just hit me so hard. And I think that was when I was just like, oh, this band is progressive and they're technical, but also they're very catchy, and they can like drive a straight line through any odd time signature and make it like accessible.
Totally. I would agree.
So that I feel like, and Neil's like, I know he's like the lyricist, but his lyricism on drums, how he plays his fills, always build and get cooler as the song goes, and so do his parts, and they're very catchy with the way they hit certain accents. I've always been I would just play along to every Rush record I could immediately when I got my kit. And my kit was a CB700, like 8-piece drum set with like a 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, like full Neil Peart tom. So I was like a Neil clone.
That's awesome.
Right off the bat.
That's great. So you jump from Rush to being like, where does it get into like the modern era? What was the first band that like,
okay, so yeah. I was in a lot of indie rock, and I was watching this band called Tokyo Police Club, which is like a Canadian indie punk rock band, and the singer was wearing a shirt of a math rock band called Maps and Atlases, and I was just like, oh, this singer that I really like, he's wearing a shirt for a band, I'll look that band up. And I saw, this is the first time I ever saw math rock in my life, and it was a live Maps and Atlases show, so everyone's hype, and they're just like tapping on the guitars, and the drummer's playing a glockenspiel at the same time as the drums, and I was just like, what? And man, there's this song called Ted Zanka by Maps and Atlases, and that song, like, that was like when I first heard this creative, even more quirky and creative, interesting music with like odd times and just different techniques. And I think that was when that's what really started. I was like, whoa, I like this. I like this kind of thing, this band. And then everyone in the comments on YouTube is calling it a math rock band. So I Google search math rock, and then I try to just see how many math rock bands I like, because a lot of them I really didn't like. And I don't know, like sometimes it'd be too core and all over the place, then other times it'd be like atmospheric. It's weird, like math and post rock, I feel like both kind of seem to come around the same time, and they're like the antithesis of one another. One's super spacey and ambient and open, and the other is way more noodly and time signature and shifty. But
has there ever been a band that's melded the two those two genres well together?
I think that's what Covet does, actually. I think that's always been I don't know about the goal of Covet, but I notice in the way a lot of our songs are written, and kind of our audience are fans of both. And I think that's what we do well, is we'll have like some riffs at the top of songs that are very like in your face, and then the middle of the song just like opens up entirely into a different kind of atmosphere. So I think that's kind of I'm glad you asked, because I think that's kind of what Covet's strength is playing off both sides, the atmospheric side and the tappy, maybe technical side.
As far as I'm interested to know, because I've seen you guys before live. Obviously, I've listened to you plenty, but I've seen you live, and it's not this is not an indictment. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's the way you are. There are a lot of notes. So
yeah.
I mean, it's okay. That's the band's language. I understand it. And you guys have a purpose. You're driving somewhere. You got a map. I get it. But what I'm curious about is, within that framework, is there anything you guys have, and maybe I just haven't heard a particular track or whatever, but do you guys ever try and say as much as you normally do, but with as few notes as possible? Like there's so much of you can almost, all that space in between the notes says as much as all the notes. Have you guys ever done something like that or ever fooled around with it?
I think that's exactly where our newest record and our future music is headed. I think we're leaving more space because, one, technical music requires a lot of momentum to play, so you have to be playing it every night for it to be better. So I think we're writing easier songs, or just catchier songs, so that they're more fun to play live. And I think saying as much as you can with as few notes as possible is always like my base for creating drum parts and beats, is finding all the right accents just around time, which is pretty much how every song starts for me. But absolutely, that's where it begins. And then I always try to come up with like an A part that I would consider my vanilla part, and then a B part where it starts to get more layered or more ghost notey. But yeah, totally.
You know, it's interesting. You use the adjective easier to describe the newer material. And while I haven't heard it, so I can't be a judge of it, I would wager to say, pardon me, I would wager to say that a lot of people can play notes. They can cram a lot of notes in. Now, you guys are intricate, but there's purpose and there's craft and there's meaning behind it. And then on a much more amateurish, hobbyist level, there's people that just noodle for no good reason. And I would think that the destination you're arriving at, easier, yeah, okay, technically it might be easier, but on a creative level, to actually say as much with fewer notes is crazy hard to do, to have it sound convincing and like pull and suck people in. So
yeah, I think it's when I say easier, I mean like physically.
Oh, okay.
Like
there you go.
Like it's physically easier. But the writing process for writing the music is still just as hard. Still as many hours go into creating parts. And a lot of this new stuff is going to be so, because we're always trying to expand our sound. And I think just like more straight ahead grooves, and of course we'll be technical. Here's the thing I tell people is that Covet doesn't really necessarily try to be a progressive or a technical band. It just happens to be a technical or progressive band because the way Yvette writes and listens to music, riffs just happen to be in 11, or they just happen to be in 7. She doesn't set out to write these songs. It's the melody itself just lands in these spaces, and then I just count this accents out, and I'm like, oh, these are in 5 and then 6. You know, it's not really, I don't think as intentional to be weird, and that's why I think it sounds authentic.
Yeah. No, that's a great assessment. That's interesting. Well, speaking about this, so you're a crazy, very skilled drummer. I mean, dude, you're so talented, and you've spent so much time in the practice room getting as good as you are. And that's led you, in one way, shape, or form, to tour the world with a successful band. But how did you manage all the practice time that it took to get so good, with the time and energy it takes to be enough of a socially well-adjusted human that can get good gigs and work with people peacefully? You know, I mean, there's a fine line between practicing a lot, practicing enough, and then practicing too much, and then you're kind of socially inept, and you can't get the gigs, and you know what I mean?
I feel you. I think that. So, I think it depends if you. Okay, I gotta just wrap my thought. I think the divide for that is if you spend too much time maybe practicing or playing, you think you are your drumming, and you're not. you're a person who's drumming. And I think having certain like toxic people kind of go in and out of your life, you're just like, okay, I need to be as good of a person or as cool of a person as I am a drummer, or else it's not even going to matter, because no one's going to want to work with me, and I'm not going to have any good friends. So just that was always something I knew, just be as good of a person or the best person, just a good homie. And I'm lucky, I have a lot of good friends that I've had. My oldest friend, Drew, I've known him since we were 5 and 6, and I still see that guy on like a weekly basis. We're like brothers. And I have a lot of friends that go back for about a decade, and that's just something I've always liked having, and I know the kind of dynamics of keeping friends around, I guess. And my friends Chris Paprota, you just saw him recently. Me and him are super good. We're super good friends and brothers. And Andy Prado, another brother of mine. But I think how I've managed to put it in, I just like, it's meeting certain drummers that inspire you to go beyond what you thought you needed to do. So the first drummers were like Mason Guidry, super gifted player. He came and he just played the gnarliest singles, and he fell off the chair and then ripped my curtains off the wall, and I was like, this is the craziest drummer I've ever seen. And then after him, Chris Paprota, he came and stayed at my house for a week, and we just talked about Odd Times and Vinny and drummers and Dave DiCenzo and like Novak, and just like getting way deeper than I had been before. And then it was meeting all these players inspiring me to go further. And every year I would just do the drum off just to kind of size myself up. And then I'd meet more drummers and like see myself and watch myself perform. So pretty much I was just playing a lot, and I was practicing, and I took it very seriously. Pretty much from the start, I was just into it. But it was really when a few milestones that you asked. I'd say the first one, at one time I was sight reading out of syncopation with my teacher Gary Stanionis at a local music shop, and I made the click disappear while I was playing, and it was like a magical like fourth dimension we entered, and I was just like, what? Like this is crazy. And then my teacher was like, wow, like he told my mom like, wow, I think Forrest is like kind of natural at drums, like you should keep pushing him into this. And that was like a first big milestone, I thought, was doing that. And then after that one, meeting Mike Johnston, freaking Big Mike J. And at the time, I've never called him that before.
Yeah, it's great.
At the time when I met Big Mike J.
Big Mike J, what up?
Tell him I said what's up. Tell him I said let's shed, because I know he sheds. Oh man, I met Mike when he was on Peisty and DW, and he invited me up to his studio to shed, because I asked if I could shed with him. It was really funny where my head was at. But yeah, we played drums together, and it was like super musical and fun, and I just realized how much I wanted to rush whatever tempo Mike set. I was just rushing. And then afterwards he's like, Forrest, you're great, you gotta stop shedding and play music. So I was like, okay. And then I immediately started the band, the Illustrated Violet, which was like my first like serious band. And when we started that band, I recruited the bass player David Adamiak, who plays with me in Covet. So it was very important for Mike to push me that way. And
that's great advice.
I'm really glad he did. Amazing advice.
Well, okay, so hang on. We got to stop here for a sec, because this is
okay.
segueing into something else I wanted to ask about. And I'm going to put out a full disclaimer. Like, as far as like a level of talent goes, like technical skill, there is no way in hell on the drums I would ever approach the technical skill of all these guys that you see videos of who are shedding like crazy chops. I mean, I have so much respect for actually the time and devotion and discipline it takes to get to that point. I literally just, I mean, if that's what makes a person happy is to physically be able to do it. If it like elevates their levels of serotonin and dopamine in their brains and makes them like a happy camper, hell yes. Would it ever align with a personal goal of mine? No. Does that make it wrong? No way. It's right for them, and I think that's what counts. But I've got to ask, because I only kind of look at it from the outside. And you're within a drumming community, with like a community of drummers, and so you could probably answer this way better than me. Like that whole scene, that whole chops type scene.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that within it, like on one hand, you sort of see this sort of like topical brotherhood, like, hey, we're all bros.
Yeah.
But I also feel like underneath there can be a bit of maybe not the healthiest like competition, and I could be wrong.
It really depends on the individual.
Okay,
sure.
all right. I mean, that makes sense. So it's not really as much of a scene as it is like a person involved.
I think it's the people who try to represent the scene and people who try to be gatekeepers of the scene. And maybe try to make it exclusive, like you need to be X good. But everyone needs to start somewhere. When I first went to the Sheds, I went to this place called the Shed Palace. And, oh man, who else was there? Benny Rogers, Mariah Carey's drummer, or something like that. He would go, Mason would go, Daoud Asiabe D-Mile would go. And I would just watch them all play for hours, and I was just like getting a taste of the deep, deep drum side, the Shed side. And this is in like 2010, so this is 10 years after Gospel Chops Shed Sessions 1 came out. And I think that's what's interesting about it is like this whole thing, it always probably existed, and I think the older jazzers and fusion guys already did this at some point. But I think it just kind of immersed on the internet around that time, and it changed the kind of paradigm of drumming where everyone would know kind of what a gospel chop is or sounds like, but it's been reduced to like a pattern or like a style of drumming when it's literally just like any chop, someone might call a gospel chop. But I think the scene itself, it really depends on the people because, I met some people that were very competitive, and then some people who were more chill about it, and some people who just wanted to learn, like me. And I think being around people who just want to learn and get better for the sake of it because they just love the drum, I think that's where those people will have the most camaraderie. But yeah, it's definitely like... I'm definitely fortunate to have met so many drummers who knew about it and were able to do it. Because it's a very kind of click niche thing that you don't need to get involved to be a professional drummer. But the only thing I think that maybe music players or people who don't shed might see at it is they'll see shedding and think to themselves that, oh, that's not musical. And I agree, it's not even trying to be music or musical. It's more of a mental pattern, it's more of like a mental pattern beatbox battle or some kind of rhythm warfare. And there are like little strategies you can play, and this is what make it interesting and make it seem like a game, is when you can play people's ideas back and forth. And because here's the thing, we're all playing the same rudiments, we're all playing the same 10 or 12. The only thing that makes it different is when it happens in time and where on the drum set. But at a point, everyone reaches this intermediate shed level where everyone can just like play and land on one. But what makes it interesting is the lyricism and the setup, how you set up parts in a song. you can set up chops or set up a lick or an idea or a concept around the drums. And I think there's a certain like level of drum musicality that you can, I don't know, explore within just drums themselves outside of music. And that's kind of like what I got really into around 2015 after I had played music for about 5 more years and kind of got away from shedding. I got back into it when I met Andy Prado. And this drummer, keyboardist named Quentin Ferb, they kind of got me back into the shed cult. And yeah.
Well, it sounds like you basically...
Could I clarify anything on that? Sorry.
Oh, no. It's great. I mean, I really do want to go out of my way because I think that sometimes... I mean, it's kind of vague. There's going to be plenty of people listening who are going to be like, what the hell is a shed scene? I mean, I guess it depends on which city you're in and who we're talking about. I'm more specifically referring to you being in Southern California and the scene that goes on there. I really want to go out of my way to say that I have so much respect for what these guys can accomplish on the drum kit. It's otherworldly. Does it like... It doesn't matter whether or not I emotionally connect with it because I have respect for it regardless, whether I do or I don't. But what I like about what you're saying is that you figured out to take from it what works for you to help you be a better musician, and then you moved on towards the other things. I mean, I don't mean you put it away for good, but you know when to move on and pick up the other things that help you become better, that are skill sets outside of that. So it was not the end. It was just the means to an end.
Exactly. It's fun to approach it in that way, to just want to be better and just like see the way people hit and the way they move or sit and what pattern they play. It gets your ears and eyes developed. Because I gotta say, if you go to one shed, your eyes will glaze over after about 10 minutes, and you're not going to absorb any new information because your brain is at capacity. You kind of have to go a lot and build a tolerance to hearing a lot of notes before you start seeing the overarching shapes and themes to what people are playing. But it's definitely good for developing the chops and sound that I wanted, because I want to be able to speak the drum language on as deep of a level as I'm speaking, if not a deeper level than how I speak. I just want to be that fluent.
Yeah, totally. You said something earlier, I'm trying to remember if it was based around the shed scene, but you were talking about being around people that... I think it was when I was talking about, how do you balance all the practice that you do along with being socially adjusted enough to get good gigs.
Yeah.
I like how you had mentioned at that point that you just tried to surround yourself with good souls and make that your mission to be a good person to others. So you're a pretty happy camper, so I have trouble thinking that you were not a happy camper up until a certain point, and then you met a drummer and bam, he showed you the light. I kind of get the feeling that like you had a good upbringing, and it was your parents or your mom or whomever that
totally
made you a happy camper from the start.
Yeah.
But I
think I was genuinely pretty stoked through different phases of my life, and I've picked up different hobbies, and I'd say my entire 20s has been drum obsessed, and it's only been recent that I've been digging into other newer hobbies. But it's interesting to explore stuff for the first time and be a beginner at things, because I get so used to drum world, and I have put in a lot of hours to play as comfortably as I do through a lot of things. But man, at times it was basically after I met Andy, I was like, hey, how much do you practice? And he was like, bro, I wake up at 6 a.m. and I practice until like 10. And then I go work my job all day, and then I go come back home. And he is like a wife and a kid. So he's a full-time dad and works a job, and he fits in like 6-hour practice days. And I'm just like, yo, what? I'm just a college kid. You know, and he's only a few years older than me, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'm clearly slacking. So I just went to town. I just hunkered down, and I was like, I just wrote down all my strengths and weaknesses, and I would just kind of tackle, okay, first goal, I want to learn all the rudiments. And I learned them all on a pad, which was a big mistake. And then I went to drum set, and then the drum set just ate me up, and I couldn't play anything. And I was like, dang, this is not good with a pad. So I was like, okay, now I got to learn them all on a drum set. Mm-hmm. And then learning that, playing them all on a drum set and trying to just make beats out of them and play them as just like loops that just go around the drum set on every drum or one drum at a time. All that stuff just kind of, I just started being like, dang, this is really fun. And then I just started like picking it apart more and more and making up my own little patterns and rudiments. And I just started to get more obsessed the more I would play and the more I'd study on YouTube. And then I hit a point, and I think this is an important point, is I saw that I was ingesting more drums than I was playing. And I was watching more than I was practicing. And I think this is something, I don't know if there's a term for it, but it's about how we all develop a sense of style before we develop a sense of skill within a thing. Like, we know what we like because when we see it, we just instantly like it. Where I knew that, okay, I'm watching like 6 hours of drum videos on YouTube a day. My phone's telling me that. So I need to just play that amount and not even watch the tube.
Yeah.
And I think that was a turning point for me, and getting my first job, and I was working at a go-kart track just so I could pay for a studio that I was renting. And I would literally work 6 hours, and then I would just go practice 6 hours at my studio. And that was just like my life for a year or two. And then and that was right before I got in Covet. So it was definitely, and after Covet, you know, going on and off tour, you kind of just want to chill a little bit and then get into a swing of things. Or, you know, you feel like you got stiff on tour and then you want to go back and practice a lot. It really depends on the tour you go on.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I definitely find myself in flux with how much I'm practicing, and trying to write music and trying to just write drums for other projects and teach. And there's just a lot of kind of hats you have to wear as a musician nowadays.
Yeah. Well, so who was the last drummer that really kicked your ass and made you stay in your practice space and play all the time, like in a good way?
It is always, every time I hear Andy Prado, every time I hear, like, in the room, anytime I hear Chris Paprota in the room or Mason Guidry, any of those three. But Joel Turcotte is another one. Those drummers I can just watch on IG and be like, dang. But also Nate Wood. Watching Nate Wood live a couple times was probably the last time I had a big epiphany and change in my own sound where I would just try to like imitate Nate, I guess, or just kind of that jazz family tree of Mark Juliana, Zach Danziger, Nate Wood, and
so was Nate when you would see him? Was he with Tigran or Kneebody?
He was with Kneebody, and I remember his time. It was like the first time I saw Chris Dave. That was another. It's like I'm very fortunate. I've gotten to see a lot of my drum heroes live. I take that for granted. I've seen like Thomas Pridgeon. I've seen Eric Moore like in the shed, and I've seen Mason Guidry and Shriek Tucker, and I've seen Matt Gartzka, and I think just seeing all these people in the room is each show a milestone for me, because I just absorb it all, and it just fires me up to play and get deeper into the drum, whether it be about how I move or the pattern I play or how I tune or how I want to feel or my attitude. Like all those things, I feel like I just absorb from watching another player.
Hmm. What is it about your drumming right now that makes you very happy?
I my drumming now that makes me happy.
Yeah, here's your chance to pat yourself on the back, and no one will hold it against you, because the goal is to walk away from playing and feeling good, like to have a mentally positive situation going on. And if you're not walking away feeling good, I mean, it could be something as simple as, man, I love the like the sticking sound that I'm pulling out of the cymbal right now. And that doesn't mean that it's a great sound, that the cymbal itself is great. It means that your touch is also doing what you want. It could be something as simple as that, just something that feels good like that.
No, I play drums absolutely based off how it feels in my hand, more so than the pattern itself that I'm aiming for. Because the feeling in the hand tells me if I did it right or not. Than if the pattern is right. So I definitely like how my hands feel. I like how my French grip feels, and I will say I like how I tune the drums. I love sitting down and playing my kit and having big tones. And like when we did our session, the engineers are always stoked when I tune a kit, and that makes me stoked that it's not just in my head, that it's like an objective nice drum sound that I can achieve fairly quickly.
And wait, when you're talking about a session, for all those out there that don't know, you're talking about the videos that we produced of you when we brought you here to Nashville. So anybody listening, you can go onto Meinl Cymbals YouTube channel and search Forrest Rice, Meinl Cymbals on YouTube, and it'll pull up a whole slew of videos that we did with them. Sorry, I had to get that shameless bit of self-promotion in.
No, absolutely. I want that out there.
Well, is there anything about your drumming right now that maybe doesn't get you down, but you're like, you know what, I got to work on that?
It's just polyrhythms in general. I play off of feel. I don't like I feel like polyrhythms make me feel boxed in. But that's only because they're awkward and I haven't achieved comfort in them. And I think that's the goal, is not to just be able to play a complex time signature or a polyrhythm, but to be comfortable within it and explore it further. And that's what would seem like independence, just making decisions while each limb is kind of running. But it seems more like a dance where, some limbs interact with others in a way where it's on and off, and then in between or on both. That's just kind of how I think of polyrhythms, and that's just never where my head's been. It's always been more of a forward momentum flow, stream of consciousness type thing. And I feel funny when people ask me what my favorite time signature is, because I always say 4, and I play all this odd time music. But it's because I can play all those ideas comfortably within 4. And still just round out a couple beats if I need, but I could play all the 7s and 5s and 9s and whatever, all in 4 or in a tuplet. And I just like being in 4. I just feel like the most comfortable. Where I remember Chris Paprota telling me he felt more comfortable in 7 than 4, and I just thought that was really interesting. But yeah, interesting.
Well, one would think that during COVID and its stay-at-home restrictions that most musicians would have tons of time to explore new territory, be even more inspired than ever before, with extra time to practice and get better at their craft. But it's odd. I've actually heard quite the opposite from some folks. I've heard that they're struggling to be inspired at all. And I get that. I mean, I understand why. We don't have to go into all the myriad of reasons of why the last 12 months have sucked for some people. But as far as that inspiration goes, what's your experience been with inspiration during COVID?
It definitely wavers, and it comes and goes. I actually just read a book called The War of Art about overcoming creative blocks. And one of the chapters was about isolation, and I really definitely resonated being in that. California's been in a lot of lockdown, and it said something like this, like just super simple, like I'm never alone because my muses are with me. And I just thought, dang, like I'm gonna think about that. They're your heroes are with you in your mind and in your heart. And I try to keep that with me, as corny as it sounds. But I think for me, it's been in exploring other hobbies so that I can appreciate, like I said, for me, I'm like a beginner at skateboarding again. And being a beginner at that after I skate and I go play drums, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm not a beginner at drums. Woohoo.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it makes me appreciate where I'm at. And I think another thing is just calling my friends or FaceTiming helps, because I will be super uninspired and uncreative, and I'll just kind of be practicing going through the ropes and kind of just moping about, and then I'll just talk to a friend, like my friend Nathan Sletner, and he just like is super nerdy about drums, and I'll just nerd out with someone, and I'm like, dang, I really want to play, and I'm inspired to like do this and that. So it's talking and FaceTiming and Zoom has been really helpful, because I think it's easy to get in your head, and we're not like having any interactions or shows. And if you get really hyped off shows, I could see it being very dry right now.
Yeah.
But like I'm in where I live in Southern California in Oceanside, it's as if the way everyone skateboards out here, it's like going to Guitar Center and seeing Vinny Colaiuta every time. Just at Guitar Center playing the E-Kit.
Yeah.
That's how it is out here, and everyone rips. So when I actually get really inspired just watching the locals just skate, and I'm just trying to do a kickflip on the flat, and they're just doing they wake up at 9 a.m. because that's how it is out here. It's like it's wild. The parks are full, and it's been such an interesting culture study for me, because I've been asking myself, why is there no music scene in San Diego? Where are all the musicians? Because you hear that it's in LA or San Francisco, and down here it's because it's skate culture. It's because it's skateboarding. Literally every kid is at the park at noon with their parents cheering them on to go drop in. It's a whole thing out here.
That's awesome.
I gotta say,
yeah, kids are just like McTwisting to get out of bed, basically.
Yeah, they literally, the parks are full around 11 a.m. I'm not even kidding.
Dude, that's awesome. Like, I love it. That sounds totally healthy to me.
It's cool, because like I'm getting into it, and when I want to skate comfortably, I have to make time for this new kind of hobby. I have to go at 9 a.m. if I want to like have a fairly open park and like just not feel the pressure of being a noob. While other course skaters are there at 8 a.m. and they've been ripping for an hour and they're already throwing themselves down the stair sets. I'm just like, wow, what a crazy world we live in. Because like I'm never going to do that. I just want to be able to kickflip nice. But
yeah, no, I get it. I totally, I know where your head's at as far as learning a new skill. I'm in the same boat, but with something else. So I get it. And I think the fact that you are as talented as you are on drums, because you've put in all that time at practice and you figured out efficient ways of practicing and whatnot, I think that it probably will help you become a better skater faster, because you'll be able to sort of get rid of all the excess, like the waste. You're not going to waste your time. You know how to get onto a more of a direct path to get better at something.
It's so true. Like I already can observe this. When I first started, I had no idea what I was doing I literally stopped skateboarding to pursue drumming. And not that I feel like I'm at the end of that. I just think like I saw what made me have to get a skateboard again was seeing Tony Hawk, and he's 56 or something. And he did literally a McTwist over my head on his vert ramp when we met with him and Atiba Jefferson. And from then on I was like, man, I used to skate, and it was that moment. It was like seeing Chris Dave or Ronald Bruner shred the drums. It was that same thing. I just saw that and I absorbed it, and then I just had to go skate.
Yeah.
After not skating for 15 years.
I love it. I'm so glad to hear you're skating again. That's great.
It's fun. I wear the full wrist guards and pads. I'm the kook. And I don't care. I love it. I'm like, I feel better every day that I skate, and I feel like I drum better because my whole body. I basically just did jump squats for a couple hours. So
Yeah, you did.
I'm feeling good about that, and I definitely want to pursue it as long as I can, because I definitely know that it has a certain time limit for when that is best.
Yeah.
Although it's being explored, I really want to just like enjoy my youthful body while I can.
Oh, dude, you're wise beyond your years. Enjoy it while you can. So I've got a couple more quick questions to ask you, and then we'll let all of our
good on time. So
we'll let all of our listeners go after this. But I think that you're a great representation of what I would call the new breed of drummers out there. So I want to know what your take is on where drumming is right now as an art form.
Well, it obviously changed since. So the way I see it is from the 2000s when gospel chops came out. That was the new meta. Everyone wanted to sound exactly like that. And that's kind of what they achieved in the 2010s. And now, 10 years after, how long has Instagram been out? I swear you could watch the drumming meta shift in the trends, like, since Instagram came out. Since video was a thing in Instagram. I think everyone got a little better. Everyone was hearing one another. People formed their entire careers off apps, YouTube and Instagram. I think I feel like we can all be super nerdy about it, and just like study as much as we want and watch as many cats. But I don't know. I'm just a fan of I'm just as much of a fan of, like, I don't know, who knows if I could say this, but I'm a big fan of Vinny and Weckl, and I'm sure those guys were big fans of their precursors, and there's just a big lineage to it. And Andy and I and Chris and I, we talk about this all the time, we wonder, like, man, I wonder when Chris or Andy and I are kicking it, and we're just like, man, we just love hanging out. We just love playing drums. Like, I wonder if, like, X-Cat and X-Cat ever hung out, and if they vibed hard, because we're clearly vibing hard about drums, and it means a lot to us. As much as anything.
Yeah, no, I would, I know what you mean about watching the lineage, basically, of the last 20 years on Instagram. Not that Instagram's been out that long, but there's been really solid representations of where drumming has been at for a while now on Instagram. And my best take on the situation has been, if we're talking about more like not just technical drumming for the sake of it, but guys who can really play, rather than just dudes who are in straight up pop bands. I feel like you had that thing you were talking about where everybody was just blowing chops and getting, like, and they're doing their own versions of McTwists on the drums, like, all the time.
Yep.
And guys like you and Paproda, now having done 2 Meinl video sessions with you guys and hearing the music that you brought to the table that you guys wrote, I was really struck by how the music you wrote was this great melodic supplementation, like coexistence with this drumming that was just balls to the wall, spectacular. It sort of somehow made your drumming even more musical than it already is in its technical way.
Thank you.
Do you know what I mean? I feel like there's a level of musicality now being set to the drumming, and otherwise you just get lost in a sea of notes if you don't bring that to the table.
I think I know what you're hitting on. I think we're finding, like, after the shock and awe factor is the listenability factor.
Yes, exactly.
And because there's music that we listen to or explore for a musical technical standpoint, like to learn something or hear something unfathomable, And then there's music that we actually enjoy and just want to listen to because it's a good band, or it's a good vibe or an atmosphere. And I also don't think I'm that great of a composer to write something super heady and complex, because I generally enjoy more straightforward, vibey, atmospheric music when I'm writing. Writing really technical music, I leave to my guitarists. But for myself, as I develop this other skill, I'm sure things will start to get more heady and complex when they need to be. But I just like I just like having a supercharged, for my WØLFY stuff at least, like a supercharged 2-minute songs with really cool beats and riffs. And if you really like it, you can just listen to it again. It doesn't need to be a 7-minute odyssey.
Totally. Before I ask you this last question, it's interesting what you said about music that you listen to learn, and then music you listen to because you really like. Years ago, when I was trying to do my I love to trace things backwards, whether it's learning about this one civilization or this one.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I mean, you name it, I'll trace it backwards if I get interested in it. Yep. And there was a time years and years and years ago where I was crazy interested in fusion and where it came from. And so as I was making my way back, and I was in this early 70s era of fusion, I was listening on one hand to Miles's Bitches Brew, and on the other hand, I'm listening to the Almonds at Fillmore East. And and there's going to be some people who are going to tell me they can listen to Bitches Brew and really enjoy it, and that's great. For me personally, I listen to Bitches Brew.
It's so gnarly.
Oh, dude, I listened to it to learn. I didn't listen to it to get soothed,
It's an experience.
But I would listen to the Almonds for both, to learn and for pleasure, because those guys were fusion. They were just coming at it from another angle, where with Miles, you had Miles putting rock beats to jazz music. With the Almonds, you had those guys putting jazz beats to like rock, or like more like blues and bluegrass, and
Just from the other angle, it was I see what you mean. It was the it was the jazz into rock, or the rock into jazz. I totally feel
right. And I think probably from my end, like the whole reason I probably connected with the Almond, in all fairness, the reason why I probably connected with the Almonds more was because, even though I don't sound it, being from Appalachia, I grew up hearing all of that, the bluegrass, the blues, the countrified stuff. I mean, it's sort of like how, like, if you're German, Oompa Loompa type music, like, it's all in your blood, that polka beat thing.
The polka?
Yeah, it's like in your blood. Even if you don't like it, it's in your blood. So I think that stuff was in my blood. I identified, but...
Totally. I heard an interview where Chick Corea says he saw Mahavishnu play, and his mind was blown, and he was like, this is like improvisational jazz rock, like this is crazy, and he wanted to start Return to Forever after that.
Wow.
Which is another iconic fusion group. I've always been like, there are some fusion bands that you can't stand to listen to because they're like too wonky or too like quirky. And then there are other ones that are just like badass. Like I think like a lot of early Mahavishnu was just really badass. A lot of early Return to Forever, Brand X.
What's funny about Mahavishnu is that I can play Birds of Fire over and over, but I can't do that. It's very soothing to me. I can't do that with Intermounting Flame.
I agree. I think it's because for me, the recording quality of Intermounting Flame is so bad. I just think it sounds like you're listening to it through a tin can.
Yeah, it's not great.
And where Birds of Fire actually sounds like really decent. And like they had this one remastered album, The Lost Trident Sessions, that sounds really good. And like anytime there's like a remaster of like, although it's probably what's the word? It's probably not, Puritan for me to want to listen to a remastered jazz record.
Oh well, if it makes you listen to it.
Oh well, yeah. I want to listen to it more now, just because it's
that's a good thing.
Put a fresh coat of paint. Yeah, Yeah, like I like hearing a remastered Zeppelin. I'm like, oh, cool. The snare's even crispier. That's tight. I'm into it. Like, why not? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that music's also good.
Oh yeah. Well, I got one more question for you, dude. Mm-hmm. What are you listening to as far as music goes these days? Like, it doesn't have to be like what's been your overarching for the last 2 years. Like this very moment, if you got in the car to go from San Diego up to like Bishop, California, and go up to, or, you're going to go up to, what the hell? I snowboarded there so many times. What's the name of that one? It's Mammoth. Thank you, Mammoth. If you're going to drive up to Mammoth, you're going to take a 6-hour, 7-hour, 8-hour road trip up there. What are you going to load into your phone to plug into the car and play?
Okay. First one, something super, most of the time chill, but they get a little crazy. Yusuf Days dropped a live album called Welcome to the Hills. And to me, he sounds like a modern Steve Gadd, like Afrobeat. He's just super great. And his drum sound and the way everything is produced sounds amazing. I love all Yusuf Days stuff that he's on. He's on an album called What Kind of Music, and Welcome to the Hills just dropped. I like him, all his projects. I also really like a lot of electronic stuff. And I go through phases where I listen to bands or more organic music and then very synthetic electronic music. And for that, or something in between, I would say Evan Marion is really good. His drummer Dana Hawkins he was in like Gospel Chops season 2 or something. So he was a young shredder, and he just rips drums on this record. Super musical and original sounding. And then more electronic stuff. This band Luo. I forget where they're from, but I think they're like a European band. LUO. They have a record called Sleep Spindles, and they do a very good mix of MIDI and electronic drum sounds with acoustic drum sounds, and they just have amazing synth tones and odd times, and they just do everything that I want to do, but like fully fledged out.
That's awesome.
They're really good. And then another band, Jogger Jazz. They're like an orchestra type progressive jazz band, and their last 2 records were very synth heavy and even inspired me to get in a synthesizer myself. But they're incredible. If you don't know who Jogger Jazz is, I definitely recommend listening to they have distinctly different sounds record to record, which is a really cool thing. They have this one record called One-Armed Bandit that is like their prog record, and it's like 70s prog style, so it's super cool and tasty. And then they have like a post-rock record called What We Must that is just a gorgeous, atmospheric, like super spacious jazz record. I would recommend that one too if you ever want to just chill out and hear something inspiring.
Dude, this is all great stuff, man. I think we've given our listeners enough to chew on for quite some time.
Yeah, it's a lot.
No, it's great. Yeah. I love it that you shared all that with us. So, Forrest, dude, thank you so much for being on this podcast, man. This has been a really great conversation. I've learned quite a bit, actually, from getting to hear you share all your views with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, brother. Thanks. Thanks for listening to Meinl Radio. If you liked this episode, please head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We would appreciate it very much. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.